Hello, friends. It's good to see you. Sunday morning, we'll be back to our Psalm series after a week off, and I will be preaching on Psalm 104, which is a creation psalm. If you know even a little bit about the Psalms, you'll know that there are Psalms that celebrate the beauty, the goodness of God's creation. And I think the sort of the quintessential nature psalm, the quintessential creation psalm is Psalm 104. It's long, 35 verses. I'm going to read the whole thing, and I urge you to read it too beforehand. And as you read it, I have a few questions for you just to prime the pump as you think about and get ready for Sunday morning. First of all, as you read this psalm and you hear the psalmist talk about creation, take you on this tour of creation, how is the way the psalmist talks about nature different than the way that science talks about nature? How are the languages different? And are those two languages opposed? Is the way that the psalmist in Psalm 104 talks about the world, about creation, is that in opposition to science? So my second question, when you're reading, you'll notice that in verse 26, the psalmist mentions Leviathan, this great sea monster that's frolicking in the deep, that's swimming in the deep. Now, for those of you who don't know the background of ancient Near Eastern mythology, Leviathan was a mythical sea serpent, a mythical dragon. So in Baal mythology, the opposing religion of Baal, Leviathan was a sea monster whom Baal fought, the god of the sea who was in combat with Baal. And Leviathan was also a symbol of terror and chaos. That's how the Baal mythology talked about it. How does verse 26 of our psalm talk about Leviathan, and how is that different than the Baal mythology? And then finally, it's not really a question, it's an observation. I'm going to read verses 27 through 29. And these verses show the absolute dependence on all of creation, including us, on the work of God, the ongoing work of God. All creatures look to you, Lord, to give them their food at the proper time. And when you give it to them, they gather it up. When you open your hand, they are satisfied with good things. When you hide your face, they are terrified. And when you take away their breath, they die and return to dust. Completely dependent on the Lord for feeding, even every breath we have is a breath that God gives, that God is engaged with. And if he takes away his presence, our breath would cease. I think of that total dependence of nature and of our own bodies on God, and it makes me think of the cross. And remember what happened to creation when Jesus died. The world went dark, right? And the earth shook. And maybe that's no surprise. If we're as connected to the work of God as these verses describe, it's no wonder that creation shook and became dark when its creator hung on a cross and died. And if you think that sounds like weird theology, listen to this stanza from the well-known hymn, Alas, and Did My Savior Bleed? Well might the sun in darkness hide and shut its glories in, when Christ, the mighty Maker, died for his own creature's sin. Looking forward to seeing you Sunday.